Okay, are the slides visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. To start with, what is this literature review? So it is just a summary of the published work in a field of study. So you have decided to carry out research on a topic. Before you start the research, you need to know what has already been done. That becomes the first step. If you do not know what people have already done, so it is like reinventing a wheel. There is no point in spending time on something that is already available. Right. So for this purpose, it is very important for a researcher to know what is already being carried out in that field of study or the topic he is interested in. Right. So that we get to know through this literature review. So it is a summary of the published work in a field of study related to the topic of your interest. And there are many ways of doing it. Few universities and few publishers have come up with different methods of doing it. And according to one publisher, that is Emerald Publishing, so this literature review is of two types. So one is research literature review, other one is systematic or evidence-based literature review. So coming to the research literature review, when you consider the review, there is no new research there. So it is just reporting of the work that is already being carried out. So it covers experimental work that is already published. So this literature review is reporting of your findings or someone's findings. It usually in general summarizes so prevailing theories, hypotheses, methods and methodologies that have proved useful. And in some cases, it could be contrasting the views of the authors as well. And it is equally important to know that which are the methods and methodologies that were unsuccessful as well. So that's about research literature review. When it comes to systematic or evidence-based literature review, so this kind of review is extensively used in the field of medicine. Give me a minute. Okay. So when it comes to medicine, it is the evidence is very important, and systematic methodology is also important. So they have developed their own way of doing literature review. So that is covered in systematic or evidence-based literature review. So now we are interested in research literature review. Okay, now the next question is why literature review? So as I told you, before starting research, it is very important for us to know many things about the topic of research. So it could be the definitions, terminologies, so in-depth knowledge of certain prerequisites and what people around the world are doing with respect to that topic. And we need to set a context. And as a researcher, you will end up publishing your work. It could be an experimental work. So while publishing your work as a research paper, this literature review becomes an essential part of a research paper. So there will always be a section under the name literature review, be it your project report or a PhD thesis, MTech thesis, or a publication, a journal article. And it showcases how the research work contributes to the body of knowledge. So that specific topic of interest. And this literature review should not be just an annotated bibliography. So what is this? Bibliography is list of references. Okay, so you get to learn more about this. Of course, you might have heard and familiar with this. References and bibliography are synonyms, but have different meaning. So depending upon the context, so it is used and it is different. So a list of references, if you just add a very brief explanation to that bibliography, it will not become a literature review, right? That is what is meant by annotated bibliography. So just take a list of references and you just add 1 or 2 lines about each of those references. So that doesn't really make a literature review. And usually it should be descriptive. Okay, it just narrates your findings. And to call it a literature review, it should provide critical assessment of the literature that you have found out. After a thorough literature study, while summarizing it, so you should critically assess the information that you have collected and you should summarize it. It should highlight the weaknesses and gaps in research. At the same time, different authors have different opinions, views. It could be based on the experimental work that they have carried out, or it could be their own opinion. So it should also bring out those opinions. It could be difference in opinion, or it could be similar thoughts or similar results, similar experience. So all those things should be clearly indicated. So these are certain things which a literature review should include. And of course, it is not restricted to this. So these are few general guidelines. And depending upon the topic, so there might be additions as well. Okay, now, of course, if you look at certain universities, almost every university have a section on literature review, right? So different universities have different approaches, and also the publishers. So likewise, whichever I have come across, I found these two to be a reasonable approach to literature review. So I am just sharing that with you. So when it comes to an approach that is published by Emerald Publishing, it consists of 4 steps. And in case of Wiley, so the methodology that they have suggested for literature review consists of 6 steps. So we shall just go into the details of this. So let's start with the 4-step approach. So the first and the foremost thing is to define the problem. So what we call it as the topic, right? So now you have selected a topic and you just have to gather some general information on that topic, and then you should define the problem. So that should clearly establish a purpose. And whatever definition, whatever the problem you are defining, if it is a very narrow and too specific, then the information available about that becomes limited. Of course, any research, new research, when it is started, that is how it is going to be. But at the same time, that is the constraint. So sources are limited. And if it is very broad, then the list will be endless. There will be too much of literature already available. It becomes very difficult for you to choose. So you just have to strike a balance between the two. Then you should find out a way of confining the literature study. Okay, one could be choosing a specific time period. So all of these points I'm going to address later by taking an example. So looking at all these methods, I just have formulated my own method of doing literature review. That is what I'm going to explain at the end. So at that time, you'll get more details about these. So going to the second step, you should locate the key literature. So in this process, you should be systematic. That means always there is a starting point. So which could be general web surfing. Okay, the moment you get to know about a topic, you just do some general search on internet, find out what all the information you find, and you just have to make a list. Say suppose you go to a specific link, you just read it, you find that it is interesting, you make note of all that information at one place. Either you write it down or you copy that information and paste it on a Word document. But do not forget to add the reference as well from wherever you have taken. It's for your own purpose, right? So at some point of time in future, when you refer back to that notes, so you should know from where you have collected that information. So for that purpose, so you have to clearly indicate from where you have taken that information, and this should be followed all the time. That is what I meant by being systematic. So keep records with a focus on the content. When you start finding information on a topic, there are possibilities of getting deviated from the topic. So you should always look back and cross check whether you are still on the right path or not. So in the process of getting new information and understanding, you tend to get lost. Okay, so that should not happen. So deviation should be avoided, and you should always focus on the content of interest. So while searching, so you should make use of specific keywords and key scholars in that field. So after spending some time on the topic of your interest, so you will realize who are the major players with respect to that topic. So who are the major researchers, contributors who have done a lot of work on that particular topic. So whatever information you are going to search could be based on the name of the author itself as a keyword, right? So you will just go through all the work that is published by a specific research group or a particular author. And also there might be many keywords. So it could be part of the, excuse me, it could be part of the topic itself. So unrelated to your topic of interest, there might be many new terminologies. So those terminologies can also be keywords. But when you keep on searching with respect to a specific terminology, there is a possibility of getting deviated from the topic. So keep track of it. Always cross check whether whatever new piece of information that you have found is still relevant to you or not. So that is important. So when it comes to searching, you should always pick the relevant information. Okay, so that can be done by filtering the results. So the moment you put a search phrase, be it a Google search or any other platform, so there will be plenty of information related to that. Lot of information, lot of links. So not everything is relevant. So you should know how to filter those results. Okay. So it could be restricting papers based on specific authors or so year of publication or a specific geographic location. So for instance, we need to know about hydrogen technology that is happening in India. So there you are restricting the geographic location to India. So if there is any information on the work that is going on in hydrogen technology from other countries, so for the moment you are not interested in that, so you restrict yourself. So that is how you narrow down your search. So if there are 10 results and out of those only 2 might be related to India and 8 might be related to other countries, so now your job becomes easier. So you will be concentrating only on those 2 links. So next is year of publication. So many things, many topics are under research from many years. It could be decades as well, or in some cases, it could be centuries as well. So, lot of information might be available on the net. So, say, suppose a scientist or a researcher by accident came up with a new topic and it was somewhere in 1900s. So, that could be the first uh, mention of the topic. So, if you just do a Google search, you might get information on that as well. Of course, it is good to know, however, there should be a limit. Okay, so if your purpose is to fill the gap, research gap, in that case, so you should see what is happening or what people have done in the last 5 years. Say this is 21. So what is that people have done in the last 5 years, that is till 2016. So you will be concentrating only on the papers from 16 to 21. So that is one way of filtering the results. Otherwise, the based on your keyword or search phrase, there might be hundreds of publications. So if you narrow it down to just 1 or 2 years based on year of publication, then it will come down to 10, 20. This is just an example. And another way is to restrict that to authors. So these are just few examples. So it could be author, year of publication, or geographic location. Like that, you just identify which is the right way to restrict your search or filter the results that you have obtained. And also you can apply quality filters, such as you will restrict the information to Scopus indexed articles only. So the research or experimental papers that are published in a Scopus index journal. So I just would like to go with that only. So if you just do a Google search, there might be publications which are non-peer reviewed, and it could be from other international journals as well, where people just take money and publish the work within no time. So those are known as predatory journals. So it might add very little value to your research. So that is why this is one quality filter which you can restrict yourself to. So that is Scopus Index journals. Next, another one could be Science Citation Indexed journals. And uh, another possibility could be when it comes to Scopus Index journals. So this Scopus platform has categorized the publications into quartiles. So quartile 1, 2, 3, and 4. So quartile 1, Q1 being the highest rated journals. So the quality of information, the standard of information might be or usually is very high in case of publications of Q1 and Q2. So if you just narrow it down to that, meaning if you apply a filter that, okay, I will refer to only papers that are published in Q1 and Q2 journals, then instead of 100 papers, you may just get 5 or 10. So that makes your job easier. And also you'll get quality information. Next is accessibility. So Of course, you might have decided to stick to Scopus Index journals. That doesn't mean all the Scopus Index journals are available for you. You may not have accessibility to all of those. So now what you do, again, you will narrow it down to only open sourced, open access journals. Okay, there are certain publications, articles that is open to everyone, which you can freely download. Or the another possibility is you just restrict to articles for which you have full text. And another possibility could be you restrict only to abstracts. Okay, so all these things depends on your need. Okay, so there is no hard and fast rule. So it depends on the purpose and your need. So this is how you filter the results. So next is sources. From where can you get all this information? So there's a range of media. So it could be textbooks, it could be journal articles, it could be newspapers, government reports, thesis, dissertation, etc. So the sky is the limit. However, at every point of time, you have to make sure that the information is relevant to you and it is the quality information, right? So everything that you find on Google is not true, okay, is not relevant. Okay, so you have to clearly make out what is interesting for you and what is reliable information and relevant information, right? So that is very important. And most of the time we end up referring to the journal articles. However, there might be much more information that is available in the textbooks. Okay, one way is to visit the library, do the physical search. So just identify the books that are available on the topic of interest. So go through those books. You will get plenty of information, authentic, reliable information there, right? And of course, so lot of articles might be published in newspaper, and there could be many government reports that are published. So all these are helpful. And of course, you are free to collect information from all these sources. However, at every point of time, you just make sure that it is authentic and reliable information, and you clearly indicate the reference. So that is more important. So if you just randomly pick some information and if you do not know from where you took that information, so there are two problems with it. One is at some point of time in future, you may not be able to recall from where you took that information. Another information is if you want to present it to someone, so you should always indicate from where you have taken that information. That is very important. So that is why, so referencing is a must. So this is about step 2. So coming to the step 3. So now with all this process, you have collected a lot of information. Now you have to do a critical analysis of the information that you have collected, right? So not everything you read will go into your article, should not go into your article, right? So only the relevant information, valuable information should be put in the literature review. Okay, and whatever you have collected, that information can be easily assimilated if you present it in the form of a table, right? Create a table of your findings. So it could be based on the results, it could be based on a theme. Say, suppose you're working on nanomaterials, so there are different methods of synthesis. So you just try to make a table, segregate or categorize the information based on such themes. And it could be on the basis of different concepts or different principles. Like that, you just segregate the information and create the table. So that's how you analyze the information that you have collected. Based on that, you get to know whether a particular information is still relevant to you or not, or is it a repetition, or is there any value addition with that information or not. You can just retain based on that analysis and you can discard the rest. So when we say discard, so there is no need to immediately delete all the information that you have collected, which you have put in the form of Word document, for instance, or any document for that matter. You just make a separate folder such as miscellaneous or crap, and you just put it there. You never know when that information is required for you in future, right? So do not delete any information that you have found. So now the fourth step is to put down that on a paper in the form of literature review. So that is writing. So you have to structure your literature review. So how is that? To start with, so you have to give an introduction. So what will be the contents of the introduction? So it could be you are going to define the topic, information, brief information about your topic of interest, then provide reason for selection of your topic, and you can provide overall trends. So what is the current status? And also gaps in research. So this will be the part of introduction. So next is the body, right? So here organizing the content that you have collected, the discussion you are going to make is very important. And how do you do that? So again, these are just examples. So all these examples may not be suitable in all the cases. So you should choose the right one according to your requirement. So one could be the chronological order. So say suppose you start from 2016, then you go to 17, 18, 19 and 21, or it could be the other way around as well. You start from the recent work that is currently happening at 21 and you go back to 16, wherever that is applicable, right? There is no hard and fast rule. So one possibility of organizing your discussion is through chronological order. So next one is, it could be based on the theme, thematic, the way I told you earlier. So it could be methods of synthesis, methods of production, or type of the material that you are using, so on and so forth. These are just random examples. And it could be contrasting different views as well. And say suppose if there is a methodical procedure, say suppose you are talking about a process. So what is the step one of the process, step two, step three, and all the information that you have collected related to step one will come first, and so on and so forth. So following a methodical procedure. So this is how you organize your discussion, and that acts as the second part of the literature review, that is body. Finally, the conclusion. So here, this is your conclusion based on your findings, right? So this is not the conclusion of the researcher who has published his experimental work. So it is your conclusion based on your findings. So you can summarize major contributions. So you can evaluate current position of research. So here you have to clearly indicate, so what is currently going on. And also you can point out if there are any flaws and gaps. And also you should indicate future scope. So this is all about the first method that is published by Emerald Publishing or suggested by Emerald Publishing. Okay, so any questions so far? So it is a lot of one-way discussion. So don't worry, this is not going to be the case for the rest of your internship. So this is the case in general sessions, right? So of course, at any point of time, you feel free to interrupt. If you have any questions, you can ask. If there are answers to those questions in the presentation itself, I may tell you to wait till the end, or I can give an explanation immediately. And if there is something that I don't know, I don't mind finding that information and sharing with you. So any questions so far?
Sir, what is Scopus index, sir? Is it quality of the journal? Is it index?
Is it, it's not clearly, I'm not able to clearly hear you. Is it Venkat?
Yes, sir. Means what is Scopus index, sir? Does it indicate the quality of the research journal?
Correct. See, uh, Scopus is a platform which publishes journal articles, okay, technical uh, articles, so research findings, okay. So it is a platform where this information is published, and there they have categorized the information according to the quality of research that is being published. So as I told you, so it consists of 4 quartiles. So there are few high-end journals, reputed journals which fall under category quartile 1. So if you would like to publish your work under those journals, so there is a minimum standard that they expect. So your work should meet those quality requirements. So likewise, every quartile will have difference. So Q3 and Q4 are comparatively, when compared with Q1 and Q2, the quality is little less. However, if you end up finding information from any of these journals from Q1 to Q4, it is much better than other articles. Like there are many predatory journals, as I mentioned, so where people just take money and publish whatever you provide. Okay, so they don't. There's a certain methodology that need to be followed before publishing your work on a platform. So they have to find out whether it is really done by you, so or is it just copying of information which people have already done, and whether these results are reliable, whatever procedure that you have described, if someone else follows that procedure, is it possible to really get those results? So replication of the results, is it possible? Repeatability, is there repeatability? Like that, there are many aspects that should be satisfied by a researcher before publishing his work in a journal. So these standards are high in case of so Q1 and Q2. Okay, so like that. So to answer your question, Scopus is a platform which publishes journal articles. So if the article is published in Scopus, that means it has some research quality. So all the journals that are published in Scopus are indexed. So those are known as Scopus indexed journals. So there is something called as impact factor. So say suppose in a journal, researchers publish 100 papers per year, and how many of those 100 papers are referred by other researchers? Okay, based on that, the impact factor of a journal is decided. If the impact factor is high, meaning many people are interested in the research that is published in that journal. So give me a minute. Okay, so I had to answer a call. Sorry for that. Okay, so did I answer your question? Hello, am I audible? Okay, so there seems to be some network issue. I'm not able to clearly hear you. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so this is how, so this is what is explained by one methodology. So now we can go to the next one. So are you finding it boring? Is it interesting, or is it something which you already knew? Is there something that you learned from this session? How is it going so far? No, this is in general for everyone. Venkat, I can make out that you are speaking, but I'm not able to clearly make out what it is. So I'm not able to hear you properly. So this question is for all of you. So I hope it is not boring or monotonous. Shall I continue?
So there's a question in the chat box by
Oh. Can a student independently publish a review paper? Yes, by all means. So that means an independent a student alone can do lot of literature review. So do some extensive literature study. So collect articles, summarize it systematically, and yes, it can be published as a review paper. However, for that you need to make sure that whatever you have put in your review paper is not something that is already reviewed, right? So that means, so in the next part I'm going to explain so what is a research gap and review gap. Based on that you will come to know. So first you need to look at the review papers that are already published in that area, right? Say suppose there are 10 review papers. So when you would like to come up with 11th review paper, you should first make out what is not there in those 10 review papers that are already published, right? So that is more important. In that case, the possibility of getting your review paper published is more. So of course, there is a session exclusively on review paper. So at that time, I will explain what editors say about writing a review paper. So what are their tips, right? So most of your question will be answered there. So in principle, yes, a student independently can publish a review paper. Any other questions? Shall I continue? Okay. So now let's look at the method that is described by Wiley Publications. So here this consists of 6 steps. So first step is to decide the area of research. So here you have to clearly specify your topic of research and restrict that area of research. As I told, if it is very narrow, you might find very little information. If it is very broad, there is no end to the information that is available. So more or less the step 1 here and there are the same. So coming to the search for literatures. So here the difference is what this method suggests is whatever information you find out. So first you will be going through the abstract of a paper, so which I'm going to explain in detail at a later stage. So based on that, you think that a particular paper or article is of relevance to the topic of interest. So then you're going to download the entire paper. Okay, so it is not just downloading. In this case, they suggest you to print that article, right? Also, find relevant books in the library, and again set a specific time frame for search. And when I say time frame, this is about how much time you are going to spend on searching for literature, right? So there is no end to this. if you keep on searching information, you can do that for one entire year on a particular topic of research, right? So there is so much of information available, right? So you have to restrict yourself. How long are you going to spend time on that? So whether it is just 1 or 2 sessions or 1 or 2 days or a week, so restrict yourself and you have to complete whatever information you find in that duration. You are going to restrict to that point. It could be number of papers as well. So what we usually do is we specify, okay, you just look for 50 papers, 100 papers, just an example. Okay, so set a specific time frame for search. So that is very important. Okay, now third is find relevant excerpts in books and articles. So whatever articles that you have downloaded or printed or the books that you have identified, so a paragraph of information or a page of information which you find relevant, so that you should extract and keep. That is what they meant by excerpts, right? So it could be key findings or conclusions, or it could be definitions or gaps, or if there is any disagreement between the authors. So all those things are addressed as excerpts here. So you just take that and keep it aside. So now, if you have downloaded a paper, then you are going to copy that information and put it in another document. Or if you have printed the paper, you just physically cut that part of information from the paper and keep it aside. So in this step, if you are working with soft copy, so you are not going to summarize. At this stage, you are not going to summarize, meaning you are not going to write that in your own words, right? So you literally copy the information and paste it at a place, because that saves a lot of time. Okay, so you just read a piece of information, you find that is relevant, you just copy that information and put it in a separate document. Or if it is a physical copy, you just keep it aside. So the next step is step 4, code the literature. So here, so as I told you, just if it is a physical paper, you just cut only that part of it, you keep it aside. If it is a soft copy, you copy that information, put it in a Word document. So next, categorize these excerpts based on a theme. Okay, so let's say you are working on an application, so you would like to use nanomaterials for antiviral coatings. So there could be many nanomaterials. So one could be based on silver, other one could be based on gold. So like that, you categorize all the information that you have collected related to gold nanoparticles at one place, silver nanoparticles at another place, and you can segregate the information based on antiviral applications at one place, so antimicrobial applications at another place. So again, this is an example. So that is how you categorize the excerpts that you have collected based on a theme. So, and in this process, say suppose you shortlisted 10 articles. Out of these 10 articles, so there are around 25 excerpts. So when you try to categorize these 25, so you might just find 3 categories where you segregate around 5 to 6 papers under each category. So say suppose it will end up to a number of 18. So the remaining excerpts may not belong to the category that you have already created. So go through those excerpts once again and find out whether you need to create a new category, or can you fit into the categories that you have already made. So clear segregation. So then stuff all the excerpts into an envelope and label those envelopes. So here we are talking about the physical excerpts. So you have printed an article, you just have cut the relevant information, that piece of information, a piece of paper you have kept at a place. So now you segregated all of that, and now we are making that as a bunch, a bundle. So put all those excepts into an envelope and label those. And next step is create a conceptual scheme. So now, so you collected the information, you categorized. Now you are going to decide the how you are going to link this. So you have to build a story, right? So you are going to connect these categories. So for that purpose, so you just identify a big board or a table where you are going to put all your excerpts category wise on the table, and you just try to find and establish a link between these, and you will end up reordering these categories to confirm continuity. And there could be cases where under a category, say you have 6 to 10 excerpts, the order in which you are going to present those excerpts might also change. So that reshuffling should take place at all the time. You have to make sure that there is continuity and there is a flow in the information that you are presenting. So all these things you are doing physically based on the pieces of paper that you have collected. So this becomes very easy when you do it physically. Okay, altering, changing the order, repositioning is very easy when you do it physically. When it comes to doing it on a soft copy, of course you can do it. So you have to create different versions. So cut the information from one place, paste it at another place. So do some reshuffling. But however, I personally found that doing it physically is more convenient. So you get a better picture. So just on one table or on one board, you get to see all the information that you have collected. So to do the same thing on a soft copy, so it's little difficult. It might look cumbersome and the visibility may not be very clear. So that is about step 5. Finally, once you have decided all these things, so now you know the order of the categories, the order of the information within a category. And if you look at all those, so it looks like a complete story. Then you start writing. So while writing, you are going to summarize that in your own words. So now this is not just a copy paste, right? So all the information should be written in your own words. Of course, you need not create something new there, right? You are just explaining whatever information that you have found from literature, but you are going to do that in your own words. Why is this important? So if you don't do that, that is known as plagiarism, right? Plagiarism is a term that is used in this research field, which should be avoided. So if someone else has done some work, so if you want to convey that information stating that person X has carried out certain work in this field and these are the findings, you should do that in your own words, and at the same time referring to that person is very important, right? So you might be thinking that anyways I'm referring, so why should I waste time on rephrasing it in my own words? No, that is not acceptable, right? You cannot simply copy information and paste it somewhere else, and if you just give the reference, that is not enough, right? You have to rewrite that in your own words, and then you have to give the reference. Both are equally important, right? Only when you rewrite in your own words, so it will bring down the plagiarism. So plagiarism is copying information and using it, and also without acknowledging it. So that should not be done. So these are professional ethics in research. And any article that you're going to publish will be subjected to plagiarism check. There are tools and softwares available to check the plagiarism. So at that time, that software will clearly indicate from where you have taken that information, and what is the percentage of plagiarism. Say, suppose you have 10,000 words in your article, how many words out of those are literally copied and pasted from other sources? So that percentage of plagiarism should be less than 10%, right? So why is this 10%? Ideally, it should be zero. However, there is an allowance of 10%. That is because there are few terms, terminologies, no matter whoever uses it, it remains the same. Okay, you are allowed to do that. You cannot reinvent a new name for a terminology or a definition, right? So that you can use. For that purpose, the allowable limit is 10%, right? So this is how you do the literature review, right? So this is about the two methods, and these are few references from where I have taken this information. And at this point of time, I would like to bring this information to your notice that many universities have well established libraries, right? So all these library, these many of these are most of these libraries are open to public, right? Anybody can access the facilities of those libraries, right? So one such library is the library of University of Arizona, right? So make use of it. There could be articles which can be downloaded with permission from those libraries. There could be some ebooks that can be referred to. Like that, there are many platforms. So make use of it while finding the relevant information. So this is about the two methods. And based on many other methods and these two methods, I have come up with my own method of doing literature review. That is what I'm going to explain you. Of course, it is based on all these. These are so it's all the extracts of many methods, and I just have figured out my own way of doing it. So that is what I suggest you to follow. Okay, why am I emphasizing this literature review so much is many of you have expressed interest in doing a research project, right? So sooner or later, whether it is with this center or not, whether it is continuation of this internship topic or not, you will end up doing research, right? So you are going to do minor project, you are going to do major project, and once you start working, so at one or the other moment, you may end up doing research. So for this purpose, this session is going to be helpful. So remember the best practices in research and professional ethics. So all these things should be followed. So that is why, so I wanted all of you to go through this, and it is going to be definitely useful for you in future. Okay, any questions? So many of you have done most of this before. So you might have carried out projects, you might have done literature study, but I'm sure definitely there is some addition to what you knew before. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Just take a break of 5 minutes and we shall continue with an example or my method. So it is 11, so 3 past 11 now. So we shall start again at 8 past 11. So a break of 5 minutes. I'll be here only. So you can just take a break and come back. Okay. So am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is that you can see on the screen?
So the antiviral coating.
Okay, good. Fine. So this is an example of the work that was carried out by students during the last internship. And just for your information, so around 8 projects were carried out during last internship. And out of these 8 projects, so some you saw yesterday during the introduction session. So it's about the product design of the hydrogen sensing systems. Those were the designs that were created by the students during the last internship. And the market study and the IoT enabled sensing systems. These were some of the things that were done by the students during last session. And 3 papers. So whatever the work they started in during the internship, so they continued, and even now some of the students and some of projects are still going on, and as a result, so almost after an year, so it has come out as it is going to come out as a review paper in Q1 journal. And this is one example. So antiviral coatings on non-metal substrates. So 2 students did an extensive work. So of course it was not just literature study. However, as the part of the process, whatever information that they have collected, so that is coming out as a review article, right? So I'm just taking this example. So you need not go into the contents, right? I just explain few certain things. You just concentrate on those. So whatever literature we are going to collect, we are going to document that in this procedure, right? So first is, of course, you are going to number all the articles that you are going to collect. So next is you're just going to put your initials as a student. Then you will add the title of the article, the year in which it is published. So who are the authors who have published those article, and highlights. Here, it is the information that you collected from that paper. So you collected a paper, you went through it, you found out that some information is relevant, and whatever excerpts we are talking about, that excerpts are going to uh, be put under this column. Okay. So next is you are going to specify which type of article is it. So whether it is a review article or an experimental paper. Okay. So before going to the next columns, I just would like to explain you a few things. So now the first stage is you'll do a Google search. So next, we should switch to articles from Scopus Index journals. So if you go to the website of Elsevier or so the Scopus itself or Science Direct, these are the places where you can get Scopus indexed journals, right? So there is a search criteria. You go there, you will put your keywords that you have shortlisted. Based on those keywords, you will get lot of articles listed, right? So again, once you get that, you are going to restrict your search by applying filters. So either you restrict that to the based on the authors or year of publication or some other criteria. Say just by putting a keyword, say suppose you get 300 articles. So all 300 might not be relevant to you. So use filters and reduce it to a lower number. So now let's say there are around 50 articles that you have found even after applying the filters. So what is the first step? The first step is you are going to just read the title. Okay, so after reading the title of the article, you may find that there is only one keyword that you had searched for. However, the rest is not relevant to you. So at that stage itself, you can skip. So next, you will go to the title of the next paper. So you read the title, you think that, you feel that, okay, this is something you are looking for. So then at that place itself, you get to read the abstract of that paper, right? So you are going to just read the abstract. Okay. So after reading the abstract, so you will get little more clarity on whether that paper is still relevant to you or not. Okay. So if you find that that article is relevant, then you will look whether you can download that paper or not. Okay, so when it comes to downloading that paper, so if you log in to the Science Direct website through your college ID, so through college you'll get many papers. There will be access to many articles through your college or institution. So that is the first stage. So if you realize that you are not able to download through your college login, so next step is you just see whether it is open access or not. If it is an open access, even without your college ID, you can download. So if it turns out that it is not an open access journal, so next is there is another platform known as ResearchGate. So many of you might be using that, right? So you create an account on ResearchGate as a student, and you get access to many research articles there. Most of the researchers across the world have a ResearchGate account where they speak about the research that they are carrying out. Whatever papers that they have published, they add to that platform and they will share that with you. Usually, based on my experience, if you send out 10 requests, so at least 7 to 8 requests will be answered within a day. Okay, all 10 will be answered, but in few cases, if they are not regular visitors to ResearchGate, it might take some time for you to get a reply from them or to get the article from them. But in general, so as and when you identify that there is a research paper that you are interested in and that is relevant to you, and you find out the author is there on the ResearchGate, you can directly post a request for that research article. So they will respond, they will share the article with you. That is how you get the article that you are interested in. Okay, so what did we do? We just entered few search phrases, then we it listed few articles, we applied filters, and we narrowed it down from more number of articles to few articles. Then we started going through the title. After going through the title, we went to the abstract. After going through the abstract, we found out that the paper is relevant. So then we move to the stage of downloading the paper. So once you download the paper, you have to go through the paper. So how do you do that? So you read the abstract. Okay. Next, you can directly go to the conclusion. So whatever claims that they have made in the abstract and in the title, so you will get to know whether there is a positive result or negative result, or is there any significant contribution. Okay, if that is the case, if you still find that that paper is relevant and there is a lot of information, then you will find out how did they arrive on that conclusion. Okay, so you will go to the results and discussion, then you will go to the materials and methods that they have used to arrive at those results. So this is one way of going through the research paper, right? Okay, and of course, another traditional way is to go through the entire paper from beginning till end. It might be a little time consuming. So this is shorter way of doing it. So you can do that. Okay, of course, for all these, there is no hard and fast rule. These are just suggestions based on experience. Okay, so this is how you go through a research article and you will continue the process. Next, you go through the next title, then go through the abstract. If it is relevant, download the paper. If you think that it is not relevant, then you will switch to the next paper, and the process just continues. Okay, this you will do until you realize that the same information is repeated, means you are getting the same information no matter wherever you search. So that is where you get to know that, okay, you have reached the limit. Of course, that may not be the case in all the topics, because in few topics, the information is enormous. Okay, there is no end to it. You have to restrict yourself based on the ways that were discussed earlier. Okay, now coming back to the documentation part. Okay, now at least by now we know how to get the papers. Now, next thing I would like to emphasize on is the difference between a research paper and a review paper, right? So what is a research article? A scientist or a researcher or group of researchers have carried out experimental work, and they have got some good results, so that they are going to publish as a journal article, as a research article or experimental article, right? So an experimental paper or a research paper is a journal article where you get to see the results of an experiment that was carried out by a group of researchers. Okay, so they defined the topic, they did some literature study, they found out the gaps, then they planned their experiments, they carried out the experiments, and they got some results. All these things are explained in a research paper. Okay, like that, say there are around 100 researchers working all around the world on a specific topic, and all of them have published 100 experimental papers, 100 research papers, right? So now a person, a novice who is going to start research on that topic, so what will he do? So he will collect these 100 papers, just an example, right? So he will go through these 100 papers, and he will come up with his review paper. Okay, what does he do in this review paper? He is not doing any new research, right? So he just found that in the literature there are 100 papers published by many researchers across the world. He went through all these 100 papers, and he is summarizing all that in the form of a review paper. So that is a review paper. So are you able to make out the difference between an experimental paper and a review paper? Is that clear? So this is important. If you do not have clarity between a research paper and a review paper, it is difficult. Of course, so I was supposed to say this in the beginning itself. So now I am bringing out this point. See, it is a heterogeneous group, right? There are students of all caliber. Okay, some might be very good, some might be, their skills of understanding might be just ordinary. So we need to cater everyone, right? So for this purpose, so I am going into little details. Okay, some might think that, okay, this is something which we already know. So and for some people, this might be completely new. So that is why I'm just going through a moderate pace so that all of you can understand. Okay, right. Yeah. So is this clear? The difference between a research paper and a review paper? Shall I proceed further?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, good. So next is, if it is a review paper, what is the coverage? So I was talking about the timeline, right? The year of publication. So that is what you are going to represent here in this column. So that means you see the very first one that is listed here. So the title is there. It was published in 2010. These are the authors. These are the highlights, and it says it's a review article, right? So what is the coverage? The coverage is from 1985 to 2010. If you go to the references section there, so they the year of publication will be mentioned. According to that, you will get to know the range. So this paper covers papers from 1985 to 2010. So just based on this one review paper. So what you should realize is, if you want to come up with your own review paper, there is no point in going back to the papers that were published from 1985 to 2010. Of course, see, I don't say that everything that was published in this duration is systematically and extensively summarized by this review article. At least the scope is narrowed down. Okay, so maybe most of the information might be covered. So it is better for you to target from 2010 onwards. This is purely based on the example that is being shown here, right? Okay, so this is what I meant by coverage. So here you are going to indicate this coverage for, okay. The next column is gaps with respect to review. So that means what is not reviewed. So this is one example. Like this, you will come across say 10 review papers. After going through those 10 review papers, you should be able to fill this column. So it says gaps with respect to review, meaning say the research started in 1970, now it is 2010, so around, sorry, 2020, so there's around 50 years. So from the past 50 years, the work is going on 51 years. So there's plenty of information available. And when you go through the review articles, you might realize that people have already reviewed the work that is carried out from 1970 till 2018. Okay, then your scope is only 2018 to 2021. Okay, so that is how you narrow it down. So you're not going to go through the papers from 1970 to 2018. Of course, for your understanding, you can do that. If your objective is to come up with a review paper, or of course, you are going to indicate irrespective of whether it is review paper or your thesis, okay, or project report. So you are going to concentrate more on this period from 2018 to 2021. Okay, especially when you concentrate on review paper, so this information is more important. And even though the information from 1970 to 2018 is covered, some people might have concentrated on only certain aspects. Okay, so some might have just concentrated on characterization information, how a material is synthesized, so how a material is characterized, and few applications. Okay, say for instance fuel cells. So if you take fuel cells, so fuel cells could be used in a transport industry, so it's for an automobile industry, and military, so aerospace, chemical engineering, civil engineering, in all domains. Okay, so people might have covered only the aerospace and automobiles and transport. So they might have not concentrated on military applications. So that becomes gap with respect to review, right? So we are talking about only the gap with respect to review, what is already being reviewed. So we are not talking about whether the research, it is not a research gap. Okay, so you need to clearly understand the difference between the research gap and the review gap. We have not went to the research gap yet. We are just talking about the review gap, meaning there is a lot of information available. So many people have published research papers. Many people have reviewed these research papers. However, in spite of that, so there is no information on specific applications. So that is what we are going to concentrate. Okay, that is what you are going to list here under gaps with respect to review. Right? Okay. So any questions at this point? So if there are no questions, so next is gaps with respect to research, right? So there might be many aspects which people have not started experimenting on at all. Okay, that is known as a research gap, especially when you are doing an MTech project work or your PhD, this becomes very important. So if you just do the same thing which people have already tried, there is no point. You have to identify the gap with respect to research, what people have not done so far. So if you're able to identify that, and if you do, then only you can become an independent researcher and you'll get your degree, right? So that is with the gap with respect to research. Okay. So for example, let's take fuel cells. So now fuel cells are the devices which can be used wherever you use battery. Okay. So let's consider drones. So drones need to be operated using batteries. So there is a general statement which says wherever batteries are used, you can replace the batteries with the fuel cells. So now, is it possible to power the drones using fuel cells? So this might be a topic which people have not explored yet. So that becomes a gap with respect to research, right? Even if people have started, there might be very few when compared to other things. If there are 100 people who are working on fuel cells, there might be very few, 2 or 3 people who are working on powering a drone with the fuel cell. Okay, there is a lot of scope for you to do research. So that is how you identify the gap with respect to research. And how do you come to know? So after going through a few research papers, not the review papers, after going through research articles, you will understand that all the people are talking about the types of fuel cells, their applications, but nobody have thought of uh, powering a drone with the fuel cell. Okay, so that you will come to know only after going through the research papers, right? Then you will get to fill this column. And for many of you who have not followed this methodology, you might feel it little confused for now. It is common, nothing to worry. Once you start practicing this, you will get a better clarity, right? So next is and number of papers reviewed in case of a review paper. So say suppose here uh, we identified that this is the review article and the coverage is from 1985 to 2010. See, just imagine uh, this team has gone through 196 research articles to come up with the review article. So one review article, if you read it, so you will get the gist of 196 papers. Okay, so this is the magnitude of papers that people or researchers go through to come up with a good review paper, right? So this is how you summarize. So this is the method that I follow and I want my students to follow. So systematic literature review is important. At the same time, documenting it is also very important. Okay, what is the use of this table? So all the information is available at one place, and whether it is a project report or a review paper, you will end up summarizing all the literature that you have collected. So at that place, you can make use of this table. Okay, so these are the benefits of this method. And whoever is willing to do research projects, you kindly follow this methodology. Okay. Yeah, so this is it for today. And let's just wait for one more session. That is whatever we have discussed today. Tomorrow we are going to discuss about the tools that can be used to handle this literature, right? So the reference managers, there are few tools. That is what we are going to discuss tomorrow. So after that, so we shall make specific plan for the topics that you have selected, and you can start working on those. But in the meantime, I suggest you to do the general Google search. Whatever we discussed today, you just try to apply all those things, right? So now you know where to find the information, what are the different sources, and how to find this information, how to document, and so on and so forth. So you just try implementing this in the topic that you have selected, right? So that so when we have the topic specific discussions, So it becomes easy for you to get your doubts clarified and continue the work at a greater pace. Right? So any questions? If you have no more questions, so we can end this session here. So at any point of time, feel free to get all your doubts clarified. So you can post a message or send me an email. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.